Ladies and gentlemen, Iran is stepping up its game. After the approval and vote by the Iranian parliament to suspend cooperation between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency, President Masoud Pezeshkian has just signed a decree enacting this law. And there are new developments. The new development is that Iranian soil is now off limits to IAEA authorities. Whether it's the inspectors or the Director General himself, no one is now allowed to set foot on Iranian soil. But Iran's motivations will surprise you. Yes, even before we get to Iran's motivations, the stated motivations, remember that Iran is simply using its intelligence. Here is a very important point to keep in mind. When Israel denied access to its territory to the United Nations Secretary General, Maranatha, it was a decision made by Israel. To this day, Antonio Guterres is not allowed to set foot on Israeli soil. The head of this major institution, the UN. Yet, when we talk about the International Atomic Energy Agency, it's a branch of the UN. But in the West, they are complaining. They say, no, Iran made a bad decision and so on and so forth. But when it was about Israel, what did they say? There was complete radio silence. But the argument that Iran put forward, let me tell you, is going to win you over. You're going to like it. In other words, you can sense that in Iran, there are men and women who are responsible enough to stand up and hold their ground against those who want to bring their country to its knees. And I'm telling you this without any bias across the board, Iran is right. Across the board. Let's dive deeper. The main motivation behind this law, which was enacted by President Masoud Pezeshkian, stems from several factors. First, Iran says, all right, before we go any deeper, share the video conference. I want to see as many shares as possible. We've had some time to rest a bit. That's why there wasn't much news, and video conferences were rare. Now, we've recovered a bit. You know, we worked really hard last month with the 12-day conflict. It wasn't easy. We were doing 18 shows a day. Can you imagine? 18 video conferences a day, or even 14. It's not easy. But now, we're gradually recovering. Share this to give me motivation. Unprecedented. The first reason, Iran says this is a response to a politically motivated resolution. And what is it about? Iran is denouncing a recent resolution from the International Atomic Energy Agency. The agency had passed a resolution. Iran considers it politically motivated, accusing the agency of having become a political tool against the country. Iran says that the IAEA has become a political tool against Iran. Is that true or false? It's true. It's true. Congratulations to Iran for figuring it out. The IAEA inspectors coming. Where are the centrifuges? They come in and they look around. Where are the this and that? They look around. They do some filming. We're going to write a report. They take down all the details. And then they hand it over to Israel. They hand it over to the United States and America, Israel. And the enemies of the Islamic Republic of Iran, at least, yes, these enemies use this to strike Iran, to try to prevent Iran from exercising a right that is fundamentally enshrined by international conventions. An inalienable right. What is Iran supposed to do? When the IAEA becomes a political tool against the country, Iran does not support it. We're not living in 1908 anymore. Let's go. Second reason, Iran accuses the IAEA of remaining silent. Tehran criticizes the IAEA's silence in the face of attacks attributed to the United States. It was the United States that admitted to and carried out attacks against Iran, and the IAEA remained silent. The organization stayed silent. They only commented on the facts but did not condemn them. They took no action. So that means they're in cahoots with the aggressor. What country in the world would accept that? Just because it's a UN organization, we have to accept it? Never. So these attacks are seen as blatant violations of IAEA safeguards. Normally, the IAEA is supposed to guarantee Iran's security and sovereignty. But the IAEA did not deliver. So Iran says these are violations of Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Violation of Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I'm telling you, when you study it, it's very clear. And the Iranians have studied it. And if it's about corn, they have that too. Why? No. So, the other point, the other reason, what does Iran say? Iran says it is about protecting national interest. The law aims to protect the interest, the supreme interest of Iran. This matter of the centrifuge, of the nuclear center, these are the supreme interests of Iran. We don't joke about it. It's also about the security of nuclear facilities and its scientists, and guaranteeing its inalienable rights to a peaceful nuclear program. Yes, Iran wants to guarantee its inalienable right, you see, to a peaceful nuclear program as stipulated by Article 4 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The treaty, the famous treaty that the West relies on to justify taking action, that America and Israel rely on to justify taking action. Article 4 of this treaty states that these countries have the right to develop peaceful nuclear programs for their development. Why do we want to take this right away from them? Tell me, is Iran right or is Iran not right? So within this law, there are key provisions. There is the suspension, there is the immediate suspension of cooperation. The law orders the immediate suspension of all cooperation with the IAEA under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and its associated safeguards agreement. This implies a significant restriction or even a halt to the agency's monitoring and inspection activities in Iran. No more inspections, no. There is also a ban on access for inspectors. They are no longer allowed to enter. Inspectors will no longer be permitted to enter Iranian nuclear sites, but Iran has left the door open. Unless clear national security guarantees are provided and validated by the Supreme National Security Council. If the Supreme National Security Council, which is made up of the president, the supreme leader, the head of government, and the chief of the general staff of the armed forces, if this council says that security is guaranteed, then they alone have the authority to permit it. So the law is tailor-made. The final point is the coordination for resuming cooperation. Cooperation will only resume if national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the security of Iran's nuclear and scientific facilities are fully guaranteed. And if Iran receives tangible guarantees regarding the IAEA's professional conduct, that's it. The law specifically requires the IAEA to guarantee the implementation of Article 4 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That means if Iran has all the guarantees that they will be allowed to continue its program, then we can let them come back in. Now, it's their choice. Either they leave Iran alone and have the right to monitor. In that case, when they have the right to monitor, they can see to what extent Iran has progressed. Or they stubbornly refuse to respect Article 4 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And then Iran works alone until it develops all kinds of monstrous nuclear weapons. Because if Iran is not monitored, Iran will do whatever it wants. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was the top international news story. I'll be back with more information shortly. This was the voice of your one and only samurai.